We interrupt this program to bring you an important Wayfair message. Wayfair's got style tips for every home. This is Nicole Byer, helping you make those rooms flyer. Today's style tip: when it comes to making a statement, treat bold patterns like neutrals. Go wild! Like an untamed animal print area rug under a rustic farmhouse table from Wayfair.com. Ooh, fierce! This has been your Wayfair style tip to keep those interiors superior.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine. And maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them. From disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Conn Report wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of the Empire Media, AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in and can read my work on ESPN.com. And don't forget, you gold members doing the Zoom session at 7:30 p.m. Friday night. So join us there. Bring your questions, comments, bring whatever you want, your enthusiasm for Sunday's game, whatever. But join me there for a private Zoom session for the gold members. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can see I'm being joined by Sammy TikTok from the Washington Post, Sam Fortier. Shout out, Mrs. Fortier. Sam, welcome back.
Con, thank you for having me. Sammy TikTok. I don't know if I love that nickname, but I appreciate the bit.
Well, I do like the nickname, so we'll see how it goes. But before we get going, you can tell people about your TikTok. Sam has actually been doing a lot of fun work on that. But I tell people about that and where else they can find you.
So this year, it's been an initiative at the Post to try to do more social video. So I've been doing TikTok, Instagram, and honestly just putting them on my Twitter too, or X. But it's been a fun thing, I think, because basically my editor and some people I work with the Post were like, hey, you should take people behind the scenes, because I don't think people realize what it is to be a beat writer, going on the flights and going to practices and talking to coaches and players, and just kind of the grind of trying to get all the information to write a good story and doing all the social media that comes with it. And so just kind of trying to take people behind the scenes, and as people saw after the Monday night game, you Standing and I got trapped in the stadium for a second. We thought the elevator wasn't working, so they get to see all the glamorous parts and all the not so glamorous.
It is a glamorous life, and so I'm glad that. Hey, do you get to talk to the players when you do this? That is.
I feel like that is the number 2 question that I get from people who, if I just meet them and I explain what I do, the number 1 is well, can you get me tickets? And I'm like, well, it doesn't really work like that, unfortunately.
No, and we do get to talk to the players. So, but that's all. Of course, everybody listening knows that here. So, anyways, but let's get away from your TikTok and your social media kingdom.
You're the guest star that is always saying, "Oh, he's using me for clicks," but when you're not in there, I don't mind if I'm in next time.
Well, next time I'm gonna get some merch and put the John Conn Report hat on there, something like that. Just do something to draw some attention. Anyways, but let's get to this team. So 3-1, 3 in a row. How much, before we get into some specifics, but how much has this start kind of changed your expectations for the rest of the season?
It's a difficult question, because I still think that there are concerns, right? Jaden is much better than I think we expected. He's much better right away than anyone I think could have hoped. But the defense still is a concern. And as they start to play tougher competition, I think that that is a real thing they're going to have to prove. Against better defenses like Cleveland and Baltimore, those are 2 really good early tests. And I'm not saying they can't do it. I'm just saying we haven't seen them do it against them. And so to me, if you were to say, hey, I know they're 3-1, I know they're leading the NFC East, but I would still say they're a fringe playoff team right now. Obviously, the schedule works in favor for them, and they don't have to go anywhere for a while. They don't have to take any, long trips for a while, which is huge. The next time that, we get on a plane is probably to New Orleans in mid-December. But so there are a lot of things working for them. in 2 weeks is great, but I think you need to see it over a longer period of time to say, hey, like these guys are really going where, the hope is that they go.
And I think you're right about the defense too. I want to see what happens if the offense has a game where, like, say the Browns, where they're not moving the ball as well, or they're not scoring as much, or whatever. What happens then? Because that's when, Dan Quinn talks about the complementary football, and every coach does, but it's been a big emphasis. That's when you see, like, can the defense rise up and basically win a 17-14 game or 20-17 game if they have to.
It's the first time we've seen complimentary football was at the very end of the first half of the Arizona game, right? Where
Right.
they get that 4th and 1 stop, and then they get a field goal to kind of increase that lead. And I think the Arizona game was closer than maybe the scoreboard looked, just because, once, and I'm not saying it was close, but like if the offense stumbles like they could against a better team, I don't think the pass rush gets to tee off in the same way, and so all these games are contextual. It's really hard. I was talking to Andrew Wiley about this actually, because I was like, hey, you were in Kansas City with the best quarterback in the league for 5 years. How many games have you won by that many points? And he was like, dude, maybe 4 or 5. Like that just doesn't happen in the NFL. And so I think you see a lot of games come down to the fourth quarter, and so can the Commanders play complementary football when it matters? Can the defense rise up when they're not put in good situations, or when they have challenges? And I should say that stop, they got to stop right after Jaden threw the pick, which was some good complementary football as well. So we're seeing flashes, and you got to be encouraged by that. But they got to be more battle tested to really believe it.
But it's so funny because even I don't want to harp on Sunday's game, but even in a blowout game, there are always like a handful of plays early that can turn the game. Like Washington converts on a 3rd and 4 deep in its own end zone, deep in its own zone, and goes out and scores a touchdown. Then on the next possession, Arizona fails to pick up a 4th and 1. And it's like right there, the game starts to shift, right? And there's always a handful of those plays that can shift a game that turns into a blowout. But if those plays go differently early, then we're not getting there. So it's just that's where the NFL is. But I do think, obviously a good sign that they did that. But the run game to me, Sam, is where the concern is. And do you, I think we hear that they're getting closer. Do you think they are? And what's your outlook for that area?
Talking about on defense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say like this is a great example from Arizona, right? Like if they don't build that lead and the Cardinals are able to feed Connor a little more, do they start having, because they had some success. They obviously the D line had some nice plays as well, and Frankie Louvu had a nice stop, but can they do that consistently? Because the defense has been out of sync. They haven't fit the run super well. Can they do that consistently? I think that's going to be a huge question mark for me going forward. I know that if Nick Chubb plays, like he's not going to be at 100%, which is great news for the Commanders because I think he is excellent running back. But I think that will be, especially against Lamar and the way that, the Ravens can do some things in the run game. Like stopping the run is going to be a huge problem for them. And if the offense stumbles and a team, gets up and can, even run, like lean on their ground game even more, are they able to like stop the tide and keep the game in reach for the offense? Those are all big questions.
And so offensively, your confidence that, listen, they're not going to score 40 points every game. Like we know that would be unusual for any team, but do you feel like they've shown enough through the 4 games that they can be a good offense all season?
And I want to zoom in on one point here. I'm glad you asked this question because I was thinking about beforehand, like what is one of my biggest takeaways from this season or this early season so far is the confidence in the offense. And I know that sounds like a squishy word, but I think it actually shows up in really material ways because, I wrote a profile of Cliff Kingsbury last week about, how he went to Thailand after he got fired by Arizona and came back. And multiple players in the locker room talked about his lack of ego and directly contrasted him with Eric Bieniemy and Scott Turner. And not to throw shade on those guys, but I think that
I think it is.
I mean, but not to,
They
I mean,
are.
Right, but I don't know if that's a Cliff Kingsbury personality thing. I don't know if that's a former head coach being secure in himself. But to me, the greatest illustration of the how do I not say culture here? Of the greatest illustration of where this offense is in a huge moment at the very end of a game against the Bengals. Terry goes up to Kingsbury and says, like, hey, I want to run this. And I think it's a really great distillation because so many people knocked Cliff Kingsbury for always lining Terry up on the left, right? And the Commanders offense changes because it's the field and the boundary. It's not just left and right. But when Terry McLaurin says, not only should you throw me, the go route into the boundary, but because Dax Hill hasn't seen me a ton, the right side corner for the Bengals hasn't seen me a ton, that actually gives me an advantage because I've been playing on the left most of the game. So to me, it's been a huge, like the confidence that players are playing with, the confidence they have in each other to say, hey, like, I feel like this is going to work, and I feel like people are going to listen to me, and the way that they've been collaborating together. There's going to be times where Terry is going to say something like that, and it's not going to work out. But I think that trust and that belief in getting everyone on board, like that is a massive deal because we haven't seen that here in a long time.
Hey, it's Bram Weinstein here, voice of the Commanders, and of course, frequent guest of this podcast, The John Keim Report. I wanted to let you all know that my show, which airs at 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. on ESPN 630, is now exclusively produced by Empire Media, my company, and is going to be distributed through our network. So I'm asking you, please, if you subscribe to this show and love this show, give mine a try as well. Subscribe to the Bram Weinstein Show wherever you get your podcasts, and many of the shows and many of the elements that are in the show will be available on the Empire Media YouTube channel. We're going to talk a ton of Commanders and other DC sports. Check it out.
Well, I will say this. If you remember at the end of the season last year with Sam Howell, now he's obviously not here anymore, but one of the questions was asked what they'd want from a new coordinator or whatever. And it's like, basically they wanted collaboration. And I think they're getting it from Kingsbury. And I do think it goes back to what you said about, maybe some egoless football. And I think that makes a big difference. You wanted to say something.
I should have said this, but I was like rambling too much. And I was like, okay, I have to stop now. But like, dude, when Terry was telling the story about him calling that route into the boundary to win the game against the Bengals, my brain just immediately went to when we were in MetLife Stadium last year, and Terry was talking about when the Giants went 0 and they were just like killing Sam Howell, and Terry was like, look, when they go 0, that creates downfield opportunities for us, and we need to call those plays to give us chances to win deep, and we're not doing it. And Terry was obviously diplomatically being like, EB, you got to open this thing up. Like, if they're going to 0 us, we got to go downfield. And just like those to me is an incredible contrast and like a really good distillation of obviously the quarterback is different, and that's a huge part of this, but like that's a really good distillation of where they're at with the offensive coordinator this year.
Sure. And I think that's a good point because you see that now and there's just more balance, and that players were frustrated and there was a stubbornness to what they were trying to do and not listening to others. Those were all complaints we heard last year, right? And not to harp on last year, but I think like you said, just to kind of illustrate the difference and why maybe it's working now. And you look at the offensive line and there were people criticizing or questioning that group. And, I'm not going to sit here
I should point out.
Listen, I was just going to say, I'm not going to sit here and say, I thought they'd be great, but I would always phrase it, I have questions, not concerns, because the problem was we didn't know the impact of all these factors on the line, just like the factors on the line last year were sometimes out of their control. Play calling, quarterback play. Well, the converse now is like the quarterback play. Jaden Daniels is really special in the pocket, and that helps them. The play calling helps them, and then their own performance is helping as well.
Exactly. Like you went from a coordinator that wanted to call drop back pass an insane amount with a quarterback that would hold it too long sometimes, to an offensive coordinator that understands. I think that's one of the most impressive things about Cliff this year is like he understands he has a special quarterback, but he also understands that he doesn't have to leverage him every play.
Right.
He is scheming up easy answers and saying, okay, like we're really going to put it on your shoulders like 6 to 7 times a game. And I think that like Jaden and against the Bengals, great example, like in those moments, Jaden has come through. Obviously he missed the deep pass to Terry against the Giants, or maybe it was the Bucks. I can't remember at this point, but there's moments that he is coming through and Cliff is putting him in the right situation, and it's quick game, and Jaden knows where his answers are. He gets to his checkdowns quickly. So I think that like the disparity in outcomes is not the same as the disparity in talent this year, but I just think everyone is elevating each other right now as opposed to hurting each other.
Well, I think the word confidence goes a long way too, because I think that also plays throughout the team. When you have a quarterback playing as well as Daniels is, it gives the others confidence and hope that you're never out of a game, or you're never out of a play. Like the 3rd down and 13 to Noah Brown, he's not the first read. He's the last read. And yet he's running his route full speed, getting over there. And because Luke McCaffrey's running his route full speed, it occupies a backside safety that then leaves Brown open. And then Daniels extends the play. So it's like his ability to extend the play keeps receivers engaged throughout the play. And I think, but that's all, there's a confidence thing that filters down to every level of what this team does, I think.
I think it's like a feedback loop, right? Because PFF, for example, graded Washington's offensive line, I think one of the best, if not the best in the league last week. And I was talking to an offensive lineman about that today or the other day. And he was like, look, like that's great and all, but I know that when I evaluated the film, I gave myself a sack and Jaden escaped it and ran out of it. And so like, I am going to look better to people because like Jaden is who he is. And he was like, that is like, I obviously want to play better. I don't want to get beat and potentially allow a sack, but your teammates' ability to pick you up in that regard, like when Cliff said, oh, I called one of the worst plays of my career at the end of that week 1 game and Jaden still like ran it and scored anyway. Like, I think those little moments just add up for people because instead of being like, finger pointing, it's like, oh, like that guy picked me up. I need to pick him up now,
That's a good point, because that's when you know you have something good. And you watch the slime sessions with Jaden and the linemen, and like it's fun to watch. You don't see that often with quarterbacks here, and you just don't. And I think that matters, but picking one another up matters. And I think it matters when the quarterback has a certain mindset that they are willing to say like, yes, I need to do better for him. If they're not fond of him, they might not say that. It may be harder to say that, but I think that goes a long way with how they gravitate to that personality of his.
I would say about Jaden, like, I spent a lot of time before the season writing about and thinking about him. I went to San Bernardino. I went to Baton Rouge. I talked to like 60 people to be like, who is this guy? And everybody said, like, when he has success, like he never gets too high, never gets too low. And Jaden, claims that like the last time he felt like really rattled was when he was 6 years old. His dad was yelling at him after a flag football game. And you hear those stories, but you hear those stories about every quarterback. I think that's just like a part of the job description to play NFL quarterback. But when he's winning Rookie of the Week, when he's winning Rookie of the Month, when people nationally can't stop talking about him, and Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers and all of these guys are talking about how good he is, and in the locker room at least, and we're not around him all the time, but when we see him, he is unchanged. He is unfazed. And he's just a normal dude who's, making jokes and talking trash with Bobby Wagner. Like, I think that says a lot. And the question is, if this keeps happening, can he still stay that way?
Right. And that's only an answer for down the road. But I mean, to this point, through LSU, through all that last year, he has. And so there's no reason to think it won't, but you never know what happens down the road. Just like looking at Sunday's game. So 3-1, and you talk about like, what can sustain, but in the past, this team has had people always say a hard time handling success. Well, they haven't handled success because they haven't been very good. Like there's a reason, you know what I mean? We're not talking about 11-win team and they lose a couple games of bad teams. We're talking about an average team that loses to other average or bad teams, right? But does it feel like this team is better equipped to handle what's now coming at them, which is positive publicity after a couple good wins in a row? And like they're now suddenly a team that used to be scorned is now a fun team and a team that people are embracing.
No, I would say I know that some people talked about the Arizona game as a trap game coming off Monday Night Football, but like if you're a road underdog, I don't think that's necessarily a trap game. This I do think fits the definition of a because you are favored, you're at home. I think the fans are going to be really excited, and ownership is going to be really excited to come home and say like, hey, like this guy who just balled out the last 2 weeks and became the talk of the NFL, like he's for real. And I think that you have to, if you want to like prove to fans, hey, we're different, get people to buy back in and buy jerseys and devote the time to come to games and do things like that. Like you got to win games like this. And I'm not saying it's a must win. And if it's competitive and they lose, like you just can't do what you did. A great example of this is like the defining loss to me, or one of the defining losses of the Ron Rivera era was like that Sunday night game against the Giants, right? It was 2022, I think, where they're 7-5, and it feels like they're in position to make the playoffs, and then you have a huge letdown. And so, as long as you avoid a huge letdown, I think you're okay. But man, like I've been covering this for 5 years, and I'm just like, I'm psyched to see what the scene is in Landover on Sunday, because I think that like this is by far the most fired up I've ever seen the fan base.
For sure. And I think the difference when like the Giants game too, like they were, God bless, I felt sorry for them because they were just not like, I'm in. And then it's like, oh yeah, they laid another egg, right? Like they were a hard team to embrace because they never came through when they needed them to do that. I do think this team is different. I think people recognize that. I think number 5 makes that difference. The way he has played has accelerated the return, I think, of the fan base. And to me, and I think Sunday you're going to see that. And I am curious to see like what is the atmosphere like. I think it could be the best atmosphere they've had for a home game in a long time.
I did not grow up in this area, and I did not know a ton about the franchise before I started covering them in 2020. But there has been like a clip circulating on Twitter recently of RG3 like taking a long run to the house, I believe against Minnesota.
74 yards, Minnesota. It was rocking.
Dude, like the crowd shots, I was like, oh my God. It's hard for me to imagine that stadium looking like that. And I'm not saying it's gonna look like that on Sunday or anything, but like if they can even get like close to that RG3 run, like that is it like kind of gave me like goosebumps just seeing it, because the first game I ever covered at FedEx was, or Northwest or whatever, was in 2019. I had just like finished covering the Nats World Series, and they were like, hey, do you want to go out to football? And I was like, sure. And it was the Lions Washington in late 2019, and like tickets were $3 or $7 on SeatGeek or something. And like, so that is the context through which I have viewed this franchise for a long time. And like, man, if it ever looked like that Minnesota game again, like that would be special.
That was a high watermark. The Dallas game that year was really, really fun too, because the atmosphere was off the charts. It was for the division. So like, but yes, that whole year was like that. And you always wonder, when will fans come back? Will they come back? And I think to me, this accelerates the return of interest. Like I'm hearing people now for the first time, like kids talking about like, yeah, I've been a Commanders fan for a long time, since last year. But like Jaden Daniels, though, is a reason why you're going to see them. You're going to see so many number 5 jerseys in the stands. Like I just think that it's really kind of, it feels like it's there, right? It's there for the taking. You win this game, and it's not really about, this game isn't going to win them back per se. You're not going to lose them on this, but you can build more momentum, and like maybe you can accelerate the return of that by months or a year or something. But I don't think it's, like you said, it's not a must win, but it's a really good opportunity to grab hold of this going into the Ravens game and doing something. But I will say they do have a good defense. They are getting Njoku back. That helps their offense. If Amari Cooper holds on to the ball, then they're a tougher offense to defend. And if they want to run the ball, then can this team stop the run? So there is that formula where you cannot go in there assuming this is a W. So that's why, there's still a ways to go. Here's the other thing, Sam, another test for them. You're now a home favorite. You're a strong favorite. How do you respond to that?
It's not Philly. Like, this is not going to be, I know Cleveland has some passionate fans, but like they're down. And so they're not going to, I don't expect them to travel super well. So you are going to be not just a home favorite, but you are potentially going to have a home field advantage. And like, I think it's a test for the team, but very specifically too, like to get back into the, kind of the matchup a little bit. Like Deshaun is not playing well. They're beat up front. Like Deshaun has been hit 49 times in 4 games, which is the most in the NFL. The difference between him and the second, whoever is second, I can't remember right now, is the same as the difference between number 2 and number 16. Like he is getting hit a ton. Like you have to capitalize if you're the pass rush here and like get after the quarterback and not allow him to get to Njoku or some of the other weapons on the outside, which they do have good weapons on the outside. Like you have to hammer their weaknesses that they've showed. And so to me, it's just like it just yeah, like I'm just fired up, man. I'm just fired up to see what happens on Sunday.
Listen, I mean, we don't sit there and we're not fans, right? But you are human. And it's so much more fun to go to a game where there's an atmosphere that's big and you're watching a good product on the field and you're covering a guy that's an exciting talent like Daniels. It just is, right? And so like, but you cover this to go to games in fun atmospheres. Going to games in December where they're already out of it is just dreadful.
I remember talking to a fan like the day that the sale became official, and I remember talking to a fan who was like, it's hard not to be angry sometimes about like how much passion and energy I've put into football that didn't ultimately matter. Like it's easy to buy in right now and feel like, oh, like this is going somewhere. This is going to mean something. But he was like, I look back, on all those years that I spent like on my couch devoting my Sundays to, and like it wasn't ever gonna mean anything. Like we weren't doing anything significant. And like when he said that, like it's just like that's really stayed with me because like I get paid to go do this and cover this team, right? Like that this is my job and I love writing and I love reporting and I love watching football. But for a fan who is just investing emotional energy, like for this, like I'm fired up because I think it's gonna like I think like the region really cares. And like
Right.
everything I read and I hear about and I talk to people about what this fan base used to be, I'm not saying it can be that again. I'm not saying it's gonna be that this week, but just like for the first time in a while, it feels like this could mean something.
I agree with you. And I think that I sense something much different. I think because the combination in the past, it was always, well, you have this quarterback, but I'm not going to root for them until Dan Snyder's gone. I'm not going to root for them till this. And, certainly there's going to be some people with the name, but you're going to bring in new people who they want to watch Jaden Daniels. They like him, right? So then they're becoming to me more of a national team too because of that. So yeah, I do agree with you. I think I'm starting to sense that more. And I think it's just all the changes have been very good. And I think that's breathed a new energy into this franchise that obviously was desperately needed. And I think Daniels is the last piece of that and an awfully huge piece of that. But he is, like everything else is coming. So I think it makes it fun for fans to root for them again because you don't have the stench at the top, right? And you have an exciting product on the field. And they're not a finished product. They are far from a finished product. And I think what I like is that they're not, doing things to say like, oh my gosh, now that you're 3-1, let's just go do this. And I think they're going to still take a patient roster building approach. Last thing, are you surprised? Like, what surprised you maybe the most about whether it's Jaden or anything else so far?
I mean, yeah, I feel like the answer there has to be Jaden, right? And I think that like just so we can avoid talking in generalities or cover things that you've probably covered before, I would say that maybe the most surprising thing to me, or not the most, but like one specific thing that I want to shout out is like when I went back and watched the game copy and the all 22 from week 1, I was like, is this unit equipped to go up tempo as much as Cliff Kingsbury wants them to? Because the communication looks sloppy. They had all these like pre-snap penalties, and even the next week in the red zone, they had all these penalties. The last 2 weeks, I have been extremely impressed. Like not just like their ability to call tempo and kind of get the looks they want to be able to manipulate the defense in the way they want, but the communication up front and Jaden's ability to kind of own that huddle and like people's understanding of like, hey, we're gonna do these hand signals or we're gonna adjust this or adjust that. To me, it's been really impressive to watch them grow and learn in real time, and I think that like that has been just like one fun subplot in and especially like when it was loud in Cincinnati, like that was a really challenging environment and it was chaotic. Like they did not know if Luke McCaffrey was supposed to be on the field or not for that last play. But like but they're figuring it out. And I think that kind of loops back to the theme that we were talking about earlier of like people are just figuring it out and elevating each other. And the pre-snap communication is one minor, tiny detail of that.
Very good, Sam. Thanks a lot. And tell people where they can find you besides Sammy TikTok.
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at SAM, the number 4TR, SAM, the number 4TR. You can find me in the Washington Post. You can find me here, although I don't know if I can do this again for a long time after the Sammy TikTok nonsense.
I'll curb that a little bit, but all right. Thanks, Sam.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. Appreciate it, man.